Okay, well, welcome back, guys. Hi, y'all. Adam Rolfe with 1080 Motion. I got my squad here. We have a really interesting conversation for today's 1080 Coaches Corner. So, topic overspeed training. That's why you're here. But are we missing the point? I know we could go many ways with this. Quick introductions. You guys can look up everybody on Instagram or find them on LinkedIn. But Chris Korfist, our guy up in Chicago. Jake Cohen, awesome to have you again. It's been a while since you jumped on. Will Collins down at Fast U down in Houston. Thank you for joining us. And then Ola and Matt, my partners in crime here, will help me with some questions at the end and kind of prepare us for what's next. So let's jump into this conversation. And please, it's a live stream. So people that have joined us today, put in your questions in the Q&A. We will push those along. We will get your answers. That's why we like to do these live instead of in the background and then push it out. Okay, Chris, I'm going to kick it off to you. Here's my first question. What are we getting right with overspeed or assisted sprint training?
What are we getting right? I think just doing it. Um, it's really effective. It's really easy to do. I think sometimes people don't pull hard enough. And that's why it's great, especially with the sprint too, that you get that speed feedback. You can see that where their max velocity is. You can't do it so much with the old one. What do you call the old one? The Legend? Or no, that's not it.
Yeah, it's the legend. It's
It's the
legendary.
Legend.
1080 sprint legend.
Yeah, you can. And really, it's not just for sprints. I do if I drill over speed just because it gives that neural correction that if it doesn't go well, you're going to fall. So you're actually tripping into a stumble reflex that you've got to get it right. I think a guy down in Central Illinois just did something with a girl with his arm with her. She was a horrible crossover runner.
Hmm.
Uh, and then he started pulling her, and all of a sudden her feet were hitting in the right place, and all of a sudden it was gone. And I'm not saying he didn't do other things, but it does have a pretty big impact. That was Robert Dunn, by the way, down in Central Illinois, who did that. And it was really cool. He said we did 2 sessions, 3 sessions, and look at the change that happened.
Yeah. Kick it over to you, Jake. What do you think we're doing right?
I think one of the main things I agree with Chris 100%. We're doing it a lot more now, so that's first off. I remember back in when I started getting into looking into overspeed and beginning of my coaching career, it was a bunch of pulleys that you had to tie to things,
Hmm.
and it was a mess and it was hard to do. And or people were running people down hills, which I still don't think is very safe to this day. But now we've got a safe way to do it, and you see it much more out and about. But I think the other thing we've gotten right on it pretty good is everyone understands the postural stuff on it. And I'm sure we'll get into this in one way or another later on. But, looking at posture and identifying posture, I think while doing it is something that people kind of understand and seem to have a handle on. It's when we get past that stuff, I don't know, people always know what they're looking for past it. But I do believe the use of it and how we're getting better about using it and managing it and schemes are much better. So it's come a long way. And I think the future is very bright on it. So I think the direction we're moving, I guess, to change it a little bit from what Chris said is a big part of it.
Nice. Nice. Will, what's up, man? Let's
What's
see.
up? What's up?
What do you think we're doing right now in the community of speed with assisted or overspeed?
I mean, specifically with 1080, I feel like, just like the other coaches were saying, having the aspect of making it somewhat consistent and controllable, having a good environment to do it, and also just tracking the data along with it, allowing it to be somewhat progressive. I think that's a big impact now, specifically with 1080. It's been a powerful impact, especially specifically for me, as a coach. I've always wanted, that was the primary reason why I reached out to you guys in the very beginning was like, this is the only thing in the world that I would feel is comfortable in doing overspeed. I never did overspeed ever in my life prior because of the fact that I felt it wasn't safe enough and the ROI wasn't high enough.
Okay, so let's I want to dovetail into that right now. Okay, so ROI, right? So Chris, you mentioned, hey, we are getting this thing flowing. We're starting to do assisted. Maybe people aren't doing it enough. And we have what I like about having these three panelists is we have a lot of different levels of athletes that we're working with. I think probably the conversation is going to be mostly around track athletes or sprinting with track athletes. But I want to dovetail into like, okay, so at the high school level, Chris, you're working your way from high school up to pros. What is the return on investment? You mentioned with Robert Dunn, and he showed me that video as well. Thank you, Robert. That was freaking awesome. That crossover gate that it improved with just doing some assisted. But what are we doing on the return on investment? Like, are we getting it really quick and then it goes away? What are we seeing for return? Is that just speed work? What kind of things would you like to talk about there?
Uh, I think frequency is good and you can watch, but I think once you get it, and by the way, we'll get into posture stuff later.
I want to.
I, uh, but once they get it down, and I think you can only set the kilograms so high before you start. Well, first of all, let's start with this. You got to make sure that their form is correct. And for me, if I'm watching, I'm looking for a heel strike. If they're heel striking, they're either A, not ready for it, which I've rarely found, or B, it's just too fast. So you're looking for like the Ken Clark tangential force where they're getting that foot underneath and you're actually training that aspect of top end speed. Once they get it down to make it more difficult, because again, it's as much of a neural challenge as it is just a flat out workout. I'm going to start to hamper you. Like if I can take away your arm swing. Now your legs have to move that much faster because there's no balance with your arms to get you to go right. And if you hit wrong without that arm balance, it's just going to force you through to a much better foot contact and reaction and relationship with the ground. So that's one thing we've done. You can go arms overhead. You can take your hands and cross them around your chest. I've taken uh, Lila exogen sleeves and I'll only weight one limb because the body's going to have to figure out that it's all got to equal out. So if that one limb is slowed down, the brain knows the rest of the body has to go that much faster. So the sum of all the moving part is going straight ahead. We've done it with same arm, same leg. We've done it one leg. In fact, there was some research that came out last year about just weighting one leg and the impact that that has on how fast you run and developing speed. So I think those are the rule or the ROI. What does ROI stand for again?
Return
Return
on
of investment.
Oh, road return of investment. That's right.
If they're going to train with you, what are they going to get out of it? And what would you put? What's the number one thing, right? Or things that you're putting into your toolbox to use to get someone better? And that's stimulus. I'm not talking about just equipment, but stimulus.
Yeah. So the stimulus of getting pulled is unlike anything else. And again, you can vary it, you can change it, you can change distances, you can change attachments, which is what I also do a lot of just because I want to change that body posture so you're not falling backwards. Because I think that's the first thing that happens is someone's immediate response is, oh my God, I'm going to fall. I've never had anyone fall, which is good. That's all really good. Um, but just to get that sternum out in front, and then move your legs fast, is kind of what we're looking for. And my investment, well, it's pretty good. My really fast kids can go really, really fast when they're overspeed, when they're getting pulled overspeed. Even the same 6 kilograms, you're getting pulled back and you max it out to 14 meters per second. Your faster kids know how to do that better. And you also bring the other ones along, where this year we had a kid that we really brought along just by doing overspeed.
Mm. Are there Okay, so I thought Les Spellman at our LA clinic had some good comments of like there may be some people that are really not going to be good adapters, and I'm not going to go into his whole talk, but are there some people that you guys do not train on assisted? Like, are there some for people that are listening, like are there some like red flags like this is not a person we should be using it for? What do you think about that, Will?
Yeah, for sure. For you know, for me, I believe it has to do with technical acuity, looking at how well they're how skilled are they towards keeping their front side mechanics and working into an efficient way, basically. A lot of times you'll find athletes who tend to trail back with their hips, and those type of athletes who don't have control or even understanding, like orientation towards that concept. Those are not athletes you want to put that type of stimulus on because really all you're doing is sending a stronger signal to improper mechanics. And then also the risk is very high. That was one of my biggest qualms of even doing any other type of overspeed prior to 1080. So I think the good example that I have is Najee Harris. So I worked with Najee since his rookie season. And Najee's probably the only athlete in the NFL that does overspeed in season. For many reasons why this is pretty baffling, that somebody could even be able to do it. For one, the workload that goes into an NFL offseason is ridiculous, usually. And for him to find the time and to be able to apply it while in the midst of him still getting prepared for games. He's been doing it now for like 3 or 4 years. What I've found for him, he didn't start doing it until about his, I believe, third season into the league. And I warned him not to, because I trained him prior to that. And the way that he was running, it would have put him at risk. Once he got to about a second, well, it was really his third season. His hips were more in front. I actually have some videos of him I can probably share here in a little bit once we go back around. But he runs like a sprinter. He's a big 200 and, 40 some pound sprinter if you watch the way he runs. And that's over from years and years and years of just learning mechanics, applying the right mechanics, finding the right type of orientation and building that skill set. We work with college athletes who are getting ready for combines. Some of these athletes I could tow. Some of these athletes I would not tow. And that it just was based off of, what is their level of acuity towards having these certain positions and not being so having that anterior pelvic tilt, basically. That's one of the
Nice.
biggest things. Yeah.
So I want to jump into that too, Jake, before we take some questions from the audience. So thank you guys. I see them coming in, and Ola's going to help me filter through those. Okay, so Jake, you were at the collegiate level. Now you did a little high school coaching at the high school level from the track standpoint. Are there kids that you will not? What are you learning from that amateur level? Taking a step back.
Yeah.
That are untrained. I
Yep.
have no idea what they're coming in. That's what I see locally where I'm at.
Yep.
Like just do you do assisted early, later? Where do you put it in? I'm very interested because you've been doing this a while now.
I have been doing it a while now, and I do work with some NFL players as well, so I got the professional side of it too a little bit. But I've actually found it more interesting with the high school kids than I did with the college kids. My college kids tended to struggle a little bit more, and it was harder to implement. They were faster, obviously, at that point. I recruited pretty decent athletes. I was very lucky in my career to have some. I was a jumps coach originally, but even my jumpers ran on 4x1s almost every year, things like that. And then eventually I became a sprint coach because of it. But the high school kids have been wonderful because the nice thing about the 1080 specifically, especially the sprint 2, is and I don't want to call them worse, but my newbies, the kids who aren't as into programs, haven't run track a lot, they love doing overspeed. And so it's hard for me to say when I'm in a session, I don't want to be looking at kids and kind of being like, you can't do this. Now, if there's injury concerns and things like that, obviously I'm never going to let someone get injured. But what I started to find is my slower kids and my kids who actually weren't as technically efficient caught up quicker. It wasn't always pretty at first. And I just coach shin angles personally when we're on it. We do a lot of drills leading up to it that are march-based drills, and you can feel however you want to feel about them. And we do some of them overspeeded too, like I think Chris was mentioning earlier. But they tend to get more coordinated faster. And I think the return on investment question that you had earlier is a big player in that. Coordination is the biggest return on investment I see. Even when the speed depreciates a little bit in the off season, when we're not training as hard, or if we go away from it, their coordination, and actually after the season ends, their coordination goes through the roof because they finally get some recovery and their central nervous system chills out a little bit from all the stress of high level competition, and they'll be fantastic. And so, to be quite frank, I've had a lot more fun with my high school athletes than I ever did with the college kids doing it, because they're all about it too and they love it. And when they love it, they really buy in. And I know that's not the most technical answer, but the coordination benefits have been through the roof, and they figure out how to run in better upright positions a lot quicker. I've historically used like wickets and things like that as well. I think Will does that a bit. And it's a great teaching tool, I think, if it's coached well and taught well. And I will pair them together and do some contrast stuff, and it's just helped kids shoot through the roof real quick. And I'm not saying it immediately turns them into, women into high school women into sub 12 sprinters, or, dudes into sub 11s, but, it helps move the needle a whole lot quicker on mechanics and what they're looking at.
Okay. That's really good. Chris, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so here's my question that thank you, Will, for the question, because I know everybody has this on top of mind. So load ranges. So I'm going to go a little audience question here, because I always have this question when I'm training people on the 1080. And we are going to be specific to the 1080 sprint because that's what we know here. So what load do you guys usually start people at on your 1080s, and like what's the max load you would do? Like maybe give me just each of you a little bit of spiel of what you're doing so people have an idea. When you say 6 kilograms earlier, do you do that with everybody, Chris, or do you start at 3? I'm gonna let you kick it off.
I start at 5. 3, a lot of times they don't feel. So I go 5 and I don't get any higher than 7. So it's just right in that range. I haven't found people get pulled. I'm looking to see if I can pull you faster than about 10% of what you normally run. And that's without changing your form. And so I'm going to vary that in between those two things. Of course, the velocity is set at 14. I never changed that. Although I have done the braking, and when you hit 12 meters a second, it's going to stop pulling. I didn't see that much difference between that and having it at 14. So from a logistical standpoint, you just crank it all the way, take it to 11 on the right-hand side, and then just vary that load.
Nice. Will, what loads are you doing with your guys, your people?
I think it's just different for different intentions, right? So like if I was doing like something for Najee, like for acceleration, because they're primary acceleration type situations, I think the conversation is, they don't run beyond like he don't run beyond 21 miles per hour in practice. Usually there's not really much practices that'll be. So the goal is to get at least about probably like 2 or 3 toes. I would do somewhere in the 4 to 5 with him on those type of ranges, and he's only being towed maybe out to like 40 yards or something like that, and then he's free running the rest if he can. Um, so that's just to get him to up to that miles per hour basically so you can get adapted and still have that stimulus and an adaptation towards it. No reason to build it and lose it. So that's what he's doing within the season. For my pros, quite different. I mean, we're doing this for max velocity purposes. So like even with Trayvon. So the first conversation I had when we pulled out there with Coach Ford, and it's the same type of conversation we always get when we talk with pro coaches for sprints, is I don't want this thing to be too aggressive because we're going to lose technical acuity. Because for us, it's very much impactful how we run and how specific we are with our contact with our feet, how we're holding our posture, how we're using our arms. All these things are very finite to us. So if you got a guy running 9.8, he's trying to get to like a 9.7, the smallest things can either set him back or push him forward, right? So I think the biggest thing we start off is 3.2. This is something that I specifically do, and it's just me playing with it. So this is just don't get caught up in the ooh, definitely playing with it. But what I've recognized from a scientific basis is that 3.2 is a little bit more aggressive than 2.9, right? So what I do is I use 3.2 as the ability to, it's a little bit more aggressive, but it's not as aggressive it would be to like take them out of position. So we did our first run with Trayvon yesterday, and he was at 3.2. Then we took it down to a 2.9, and then you can see from our own eyes, you're like, wow, he's able to now, because his body's taking in that stimulus, adapted to it, now he's a little bit less, he's actually a lot more in position, striking down the way we want him to. He's actually staying more active on his top end mechanics instead of actually being drugged. One of the worst things I ever like to see is seeing somebody getting drugged by a 1080. You know what I mean? It's very not positive for me, at least. And then we're dealing with those high level sprinters at max velocity. It's dangerous. We went out to Florial in Texas, and he had, that was his big concern too, was like, hey, what do I keep it at to where I want to get the stimulus, but I do not want to lose technical acuity and position and coordination. Where's my middle ground with that? And that's pretty much my deal. I keep it at 3.2. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. In the past, when I first got it, I was at about 5. I was at like 4.5 at 5. And I had one of my guys who ran he made I think 7th in the trials in 200, ran 2030. If he fared well with it, I feel like he was still being somewhat drugged. Now that I play with it more, I'll probably bring it down a little bit more for max velocity runs.
Nice. Nice.
Mm.
Okay, Jake, so this I love that you go all the way to the to the professional football guys all the way down to the high school level. So I'm very interested in what you've been finding with the high school kids on up for load.
Yeah, so I've gone anywhere from 4 to 8 actually. I kind of agree with Chris, and it depends on the dudes you got because I haven't had super fast dudes in a while, probably since 2021. Guys who were like, we're talking,
Mm-hmm.
high level sprinters. Um, with my high school kids, 4 gets them going. With better accelerators, I can do a little bit more. So guys who push well tend to handle the load a little bit better because it's not as jarring to them right away because they'll spend some time on the ground and still push even with the overspeed. And I generally only start people in 2-point stance when I'm doing overspeed. I don't come from the ground or anything like that. So it is basically just getting thrown into max velocity mechanics right away. But I have a lot of jumpers and a lot of people who come from 2-point, 3-point stances or roll in starts and things like that. They'll keep the chest down and push, especially because they're rhythm dominant athletes in a lot of ways, shapes, and forms. And so with my bigger guys, I've gone up to 7 or 8 because I'm going to be real honest with you. I got some 300 pounders and I got some 230, I got some linebackers who are 235 plus, and they come to me to sprint. They don't come to me to lift weights because they can one arm DB bench 185. And so, I'll put more on them because they're not going to go as far. The mechanics for them stay pretty safe because they're bigger guys and they don't get out of control. And it helps them feel the positions a little bit better and gets them moving a little bit more. They feel fast and dainty like little guys.
That's awesome.
Could
That's a
I
really
could I chime in here because obviously here you see different load ranges being used. And Will, you were touching on top speed. Jake, you were also touching on acceleration mechanics. What kind of distances? Because that's going to feed the whole stimulus, right? So
Exactly.
what kind of distances are you then looking at?
I'm,
Like,
I'm primarily like above 70. So we did Trayvon at 70 meters yesterday. His reason and the science behind it is this: his max velocity has been tested at 65 the last time it was tested. So then the fact that we're going 70, we should incrementally push that stimulus to get him closer to having a further max velocity. That's the goal. So, I wouldn't have done 90 with them up front, especially in your first session. Now, for our athletes that we have in that are high school athletes, I'm actually doing somewhere towards 80 and 90. And specifically for them is that I'm trying to overstimulate a position longer so they can get used to that position longer at that velocity. So that's the concept behind it. So we're doing like 80 or 90 for my high school / collegiate sprinters, but specifically for Trayvon, he's already running 984 right now. So it needs to be a lot more tailored to the specificity and the incrementalness of how we're trying to get progressively better.
Chris, what are you doing on distance?
It varies.
And it should vary, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the point, and that's the hard thing about all this thing is that
So if I'm out on the street, we're going 60 meters, 70 meters, just because, it's going to go slack or I use a release and, they'll continue to go. Indoors, I only have about 60 meters to go, so it's shorter, but, I want them to get going faster and really learn how to push out and use that speed so they get the balance of getting pulled out in front. So again, it varies, but again, I'm still using about the same resistance, the 4 to 7 range, regardless.
Yeah, for football guys, it's more like 40, 50 yards for us.
Yeah. When I
Jake, what-
had, when the NFL guys come, I still keep it 40 to 50. Just because they come here, they want max velocity. That's why they come here.
See, I want to know. See, the dying question for me is the 300-pound lineman, how far Jake is pulling them. That's my question.
Yeah.
Because I will get that question tomorrow. So I need to know an answer because I will have my football guys calling me like, what are they doing?
Yeah. So I'll honestly go as short as 10 meters. So, or 10 yard, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
They'll do good.
Yeah. 10 yards usually, but I go all the way out to 90 as well. But look, the bigger the guy, the less I'm going to upright sprint them, obviously. My offensive linemen aren't, if they're running down the field, they're celebrating. If the defensive linemen are running down the field, they're crying. So we try to avoid even talking about that, to be quite frank. But but we'll get them moving quicker. It's still a stimulus, it's still coordination. And so I keep them shorter, obviously. The bigger guys, honestly, the furthest I'll tow them out is probably 30. And then I bridge it. I kind of make you earn distance. I haven't even gone out past 70 in a long time. The philosophy I've always kind of used with it, and I know this goes into assisted speed versus overspeed a little bit if we want to differentiate, but
We can.
with assisted speed, I don't ever go more than like a 30 or 40 toe, and then I let them run off of it, right? Or I pull them up to a certain point, right? And the goal is to get them to come off the machine. And I'm still using one of the upside down hook belts because my Bluetooth one was property of University of Illinois, unfortunately. And so it's sitting there collecting dust now. But it's one of those things where I'll give different ranges, and then as they look better, I'll let them go further. But that 3-second max velocity thing is always in my head, where you can only hold your max velocity for so long. And so a lot of times when I'm trying to get them to do actual overspeed, where we're going past what they're capable of a little bit, up to that 10% number, the goal is for them just to be able to hold on to it for 30 meters if they can. So with the actual sprinters and people who are looking to be fast, because it's great when they can go past that, but they've got to earn the ability to go past that, because we know in a race, top end speed is going to get you to decelerate less. So if you can hit a higher top end speed, it looks like you're decelerating less than everyone else. So I'm just trying to increase the zones where they're going to hit it more than anything.
So within that, I'll hop in. So just as Ola said, the context for the load is how far you're running, but also within how far you're running, how much of that is at max velocity or all out. So I'll ask how you guys coach and cue this. If it's 40 yards, if it's 70 meters, is that a full sprint the whole time? Are you building into it kind of like a fly 10, just trying to hit those 3 seconds, 30 meters, whatever it is? So is it full sprints? Is it like a flying sprint? Kind of how are those actual distances coached and cued and executed?
I got some video if y'all want me to share to kind of liven up keep it a little juicy in here, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Let me
We'll critique it.
let's keep it juicy. Let me show you some video.
But I think that's a real question, Matt, that we get a lot, is like, yeah, I mean, just putting on the 4 kg and going is not the total package. You have to coach this. You have to coach this. And yes, I'm very interested in learning more.
Okay, so this is how we do some of our overspeed. I'm gonna use some of the flyer videos. This is yesterday. So this is Trayvon coming out. This is pretty much the base model of what we do with our sprinters. You're pushing out, knee drive, focusing on pushing, still pushing, and then you're accelerating.
We're constant load here. We're like doing the 3.2 constant load, no variable load,
Yeah,
right?
3.2, no variable load. I'm gonna start playing with the variable load sometime probably this week.
So, and he's going, and I'm asking stupid questions because I don't know. So he's going all out from the beginning. So to Matt's
Yeah.
point, you're coaching all out. Chris and Jake, do you guys do the same thing? Are you usually coaching, hey, if we're going 70 meters or 60 meters?
Yeah, when that thing's
the
pulling
jump.
at you, there's no way around it. You're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Once
I
you
think
decide, well, I'm gonna break it a little bit and build into it, you're putting on the brakes and you're setting up a bait. It's not what its goal is.
Even
Oh,
with variable load?
I've played with variable load. Yeah.
I have as well.
I
So
didn't know
thi-
a variable load because you can start, like obviously we're getting up faster. Variable load for sure, we're getting acceleration early because we're giving him heavier load and going lighter.
Yes.
So I just didn't know if there was more intent with that or not.
No, it's just go. I tell people it's a roller coaster. You don't want brakes on your roller coaster. Just go. Think of it as fun. This is the best, most roller coaster ride you can have without going to Great America.
That's
I just coach shin angles in the beginning, and I try to get him to push a tiny bit, but once he's right, once you're going, you're going. There's not much you can do.
yeah.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. I thought I wouldn't be able to be heard. So like, back to what I was saying, this is one of the things that I always pay attention to. You want to reach a certain velocity. So if you're not pushing, which he wasn't here, this is pretty terrible. He's accelerating some, trying to get in position. This is his readout from this. It's just, and this is all relative. Let's not take it for
real quick. Why was that terrible? Like, what are you seeing as a coach that makes that terrible for?
I'm about to show you I'm going to show you the difference.
Okay.
So if this is terrible, this is what I was more of looking for. Push, accelerate. So the same thing you saw from Trayvon. So like with Trayvon, he actually push. Now he's accelerating, attacking down, allowing his body to gradually rise. Then he's stepping down. This is key. To increase your velocity, you're going to have to approach it with a similar race model that you would if you were to actually sprint. So some of these kids, and it's usually kids, some of these kids, because they're afraid or they're not fully acclimated, they're going to just try to stand up, which is what he did here. Stood up and just tried to go quick and then try to march. Here, he's going to throw some knees in the game. Knee, down. This is what we're trying to go. And this is the velocity difference. This is the first one. This is the next one. It's quite a difference. You know what I mean? So that's a very big thing for us. And then here's one of my pro athletes. She's ran 11.0. Her issue, similar, I believe. Let me see. Knee. Only about 2 or 3 knees. So this is every single one of her pulls is the same, but her focus was on the latter half of racing because her weakness has been that whole season, that latter half. So her focus was on that. So what I had to do in that practice was like, hey, do not forget, you do need to push still too to increase the velocity. If you're going to get adapted to a higher velocity, you still have to generate some of that. Though the machine is pulling you, if you're not pushing, then you're not reaching overspeed. There's more speed you can gain, there's more velocity to be gained. And then this kind of leads to the conversation for football players. This is actually, let me show you the same athlete. This is the same athlete 3 weeks later on Overspeed. He hit 25 something here. Look at the difference. Look how long he's pushing. That's the point. And he hit 25.2 here from coming from 24, I believe 6 a few weeks ago. And that's all because of the length of his push. Now this is going into football players. So this is us at the Charger Stadium, push. This is going through wickets, right? So this was his latter wicket. This is I believe his first wicket. One's going to be floating. That's a float. This is actually a strike down. When you're being towed, you can only strike down because you're being pulled. So that's the type of stimulus we're trying to focus on, which is applying, having your feet coming down more, and that concept being, signaled into the body so you can build that type of adaptation. So for us specifically, to truly achieve overspeed, we try to incorporate the concept of our race model, which is you've got to push something similar to what you would do in your true race or in the way you truly would reach your max velocity.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's good examples of seeing this. The things that come to my head, two things I want to talk about. Number one, Jake, you brought this up. Difference between, because Matt and I were messing with overspeed or assisted sprinting on our little title here. And I do think there's a difference between overspeed and assisted sprinting. And I would love for you to give us your opinion of kind of what those are. Just because what is the difference between those things when we talk about it?
Yeah. So assisted speed to me is the idea that you're helping someone get up to a speed that they can get to. When you're doing assisted speed, for me, a lot of times it's because I'm trying to protect the athlete from a ton of fatigue in pushing. And so I always teach them to push, don't get me wrong. I believe everything Will just said about that was wonderful. Shin angles, all of that matter, punching the knee. But when we get assisted speed, I don't necessarily need them to get pulled past what they're capable of. I need to get them up to a certain point and let them do something that I'm trying to accomplish that day.
Okay.
And so I love to use assisted speed, especially in season, a little bit more than overspeed actually, because it helps prevent rhythm changes and things like that. Because as Will was saying, rhythm is going to be your race model, or your rhythm, is going to be one of the most important things when you're trying to run fast. And if it is all over the place, and this is a big thing with jumpers on runways, when their rhythm gets messed up, they are nightmares. And they will just never hit the board. They'll become finicky at best, and so it's very important to protect their rhythm. So assisted speed helps a lot more with that. Overspeed, obviously, we've been talking about it. It's the idea of actually clocking the central nervous system, going past where you can go and taking care of business. And I love both, just for the record. I think both are huge, huge advantages.
I love it. Okay, so then the other question that popped up, and then Ola, keep me on track because I know we got a lot of questions here. So take over after this because I'll just start asking my questions. And we talked about this, Jake and Chris, 2021, our summit way back in the day. If you guys remember when we were virtual the first time, Summit 1080 Summit 2021 for customers. But where are we at now on? So a lot of chatter. I'm a sports PT, a lot of hamstring issues all across the world. Everybody's worried about hamstring, and there's a lot of issues there, of course. And I'm not going to go into what I want to talk to you guys about is, okay, you had Najee there, Will, at his training camp, at his facility. He's paid contract, and you're doing assisted overspeed, however you want to look at it right now. But you're pulling him, you're towing him. Are you fearful of him pulling a hamstring when he does that, or are you doing something to make sure we're ready? I just want to bring that up because I
Yeah,
think we have
so
some very valid things to talk about here.
it's preparation. So like you're right. So like for me, I'm not afraid because I built him. So I spent the very first 3 to 4 weeks doing posterior chain, ankle development, range of motion in the ankles, developing his ability to be able to be stable in that situation. Now I'm not gonna lie, Najee likes to get it done right away. He want to get out there. But I warned him. I actually warned him. I said, brother, your hamstring's not built for all this. You're just not ready for this. If we take you out there and we start to do this type of work, over time, you're gonna start to feel, you're gonna start to grab for your hamstring. Them hamstrings gonna start hollering at you. Um, Fast forward, we started doing treadmill work. So I'm gonna kind of show some of that real quick. Maybe if I have that, let me see. So we did this treadmill work, and this is a good way of developing speed endurance for athletes who may not work on speed endurance because they don't really get to those velocities and have to hold those velocities. This is Miles Sanders, and then this is Najee. They're going to get up to like about 18 to 19 miles per hour, whatever they're not tired to hit. Once they hit that mark, we're going to count for 3 seconds. They're going to hold those positions for those 3 seconds. And then we start off with like 3 or 4 of these at the end of our workouts from doing, this is our actual workout. So after doing sets of resisted runs, acceleration runs, that'll be the back end of the workout. So basically, we're building speed endurance. These are some of the drills that I like to incorporate. So they're building that dexterity and that ability to handle, cycling in front and slamming back down in place. So this is all a build up to get ready to go outside. We spend more time inside for I'd say about a good 4 weeks. Then we spend the rest of their off season outside, like we're actually running outside. And these are more of the, outside runs and stepping outside. And this is actually Najee's probably first session outside, resisted, things of that nature. And we really didn't start getting into like high velocity assisted work until right before he's about to leave, which is probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's not like we're just overspeeding all day. It's more or less we're building up the posterior chain, building up the keels in the back so they can have the stability within their core and their hip to be able to hold the posture. Then I have to build continuity and ability to sustain that. So that we're building endurance within those muscles and within those movements. So I'm actually testing them within an isolated situation. That's why I like to use that curved treadmill. It's isolated. I'm right there on you. You don't have to think and run at the same time. I'm right here cueing you. I'm like, hey, your hips are falling back. You need to do this. So it gives me an isolated cue space. So then when we go out to run, I'm pretty secure. I'm like, yeah, if you got
We're
hurt, that
good.
was, yeah.
We're good to go. So
Yeah, if you get
yeah,
hurt, it's
that's
kind of on
good.
your own. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Chris, what are your thoughts on injuries, hamstrings with assisted?
I've never run into that problem. It hasn't happened.
I got a hot take to go on that too.
Oh, now we're talking. Let's go.
I don't know if it's a hot take. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's lukewarm. But I don't think it's possible to tear your hamstring on overspeed. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
I haven't had that issue. Yeah.
like I don't worry about it too much because the ground contact times and most in my experience, especially with track athletes who are the hamstring bunch and 4-time hamstring tear survivor here, I generally think it forces them to put their foot, even if they break a little bit. Most hamstring tears occur on the backside when they're pushing off the ground and they get excessively backside and knee flexion occurs too much. They're not pushing vertical enough. You, like Will said earlier, you have to push vertical, right? Like if it's pulling you over the wickets, you don't have a chance but to strike down. And if you strike down, your shin angle is straight up, you are going to go vertical. And then the only reaction all I tell my kids is to stay front side when they do it. So even if we start early on, I just harp on staying front side. And I'd be hard pressed to see it happening. I don't disagree with Will trying to ramp it up to make sure, especially athletes who make that much money are safe. But, at the same time, I do think it's relatively safe.
Yeah, I don't think it's dangerous. I'm always vying for caution.
I don't blame you, sir.
All right, Ola, I'm going to let you go through some of these questions so our lovely audience here can get their answers.
Yeah, you've touched upon it, but like, when would you say? You touched upon it in terms of posture and positioning. Like, when would you say athletes are ready? Because it's always the question of, and we touched upon it here now. Will you building up to it, and then you're ready, and you graduate, and then you have your assisted stimuli. When do you put it in, or what are some key things for you?
I think
Maybe Jake. Well, go ahead, Will.
I think for NFL side, it's a little different than high school and collegiate side. But for just strictly NFL, they usually come banged up, So just establish a foundation to kind of get an understanding of what their issues is and what their bodies are in an isolated area. So it's usually about 4 weeks. I use like about 4 weeks to kind of establish them from a technical acuity standpoint, building the hardware from the hamstring to the backs and stabilization muscles, make sure everything's intact. I just trying to get a good read on where they're at. And then from there and through the drilling, a lot of the assisted and resisted drilling, I'm able to witness, hey, you're able to actually cast front side instead of me yelling out front side. What does that mean? You know what I mean? So a lot of the drilling that we're doing offers them an isolated foundation on building upon the concept. Once I find them to reach a good level of understanding the concept, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. And then from there, we can use it all the time. And then like the difference between assisted and overspeed, I use more assisted running with them, basically trying to get more reps of higher velocities with less strain and less tension on their body. So really, the assisted running allows them to get more valuable adaptation in a position they probably wouldn't have been able to build themselves out to as many times.
Jake or Chris?
I do a 3 to 6 week GPP with general prep with most of my athletes, depending on level, training age, things like that. During general prep, I will do some assisted stuff, but usually that's kind of after GPP, we'll start heading towards more max velocity type work with most athletes, depending on obviously the age, the sport, and all that. But so after I do a little GPP with most athletes, we're good to go. And that's more from a technical standpoint than anything. It's less having to do with preparedness. It's more having to do with what we need to get ready for a long season in any sport, or these high school seasons are crazy these days. These kids never stop. And so it's ebbing and flowing with them. But I'm not looking for necessarily technical acuity, because I do think the overspeed and the assisted speed help build technical acuity. So I'm just making sure within a session we're safe. If I need to pull a kid off and teach them something, we teach and we move and we continue to learn.
Yeah, I think pulling someone puts a lot of people in a good position. You can change arm positions and such to get what you want. Like if you want your pelvis, you need more of your pelvis up, then you put, we do Frankenstein arms or something like that, something where you're going to offset the balance, because ultimately the first thing the body needs to do is balance. So if I can upset your balance by putting, an arm out in front or something like that, you're going to force them to be in a good position. So Yeah, you know, plus as a high school track coach, I've had some of these kids for 2 and 3 years, and so they already know it. They're already built up. They know what to expect. Younger people, first couple times, will just drill first, some overspeed drills, just so they can get a feel of getting pulled and getting their feet underneath them, and then I'll pull them.
Can you explain that a little more, like the drills, just so people are clear? Like, is like 15-yard big pulls? Because you and I talked about this earlier. Like, you're not going for overspeed, but you're giving him some assistance. Like, give us a little bit more.
We'll go far, 40, 50 meters, just because I want to have that endurance to go fast. I just don't want this touch, like 3 strides or something like that. I want you to have to move that limb extra fast for a longer period of time. That way you're building some form of endurance, speed, true speed endurance, or we'll call it limb velocity endurance, so we don't confuse people. Prime time runs, single leg prime time runs with the cycle, anything that you throw out there, you're going to pull them and get them. They've got to be in a better position. And I think that's really the magic of it, is you can pull people into a good position so they know what it's like to run fast.
Which brings me to, because we're talking about top end speed here, and we're looking at top end speed. What are some changes that you've seen to acceleration, like the acceleration component of just sprinting based upon the stimuli of assisted sprinting? Because, historically we're thinking, okay, top end speed, but what do you also see in terms of acceleration performance?
I think for me, I'm seeing that they're learning how to keep the consistency in developing the progression and acceleration. So like sometimes these athletes don't have maybe the right shin angles or the right mechanics sometimes. And like same thing that Chris and Jake is saying, that they're getting pulled into having the right angles. So then the fact that you're being pulled into it, it's making you more aware and more adaptive and proprioceptively, you're picking up on it more. So then when you go off and you're contrast and you have no assistance, you're like, I'm looking for this feeling again. I'm looking to make this smooth like it was. I remember prior it was like a push, then accelerate for me. Now it's a push and accelerate for me, where it's taking the black and the white and making it gray. So I've been witnessing that more specifically with the football guys. And then for my track athletes, it's giving them the opportunity to find that flow as well, like a flow between pushing and accelerating.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you get people to push. I mean, when they're taking off, they have no choice but to push. And they can, again, getting that weight out in front, I think is huge, that people can feel their weight out in front and feel comfortable with their weight out in front.
I've had a lot of kids, and I'll answer it slightly different. I agree with everything Will and Chris said, but I've also seen sharper rises in acceleration ability to get to peak speed more efficiently. The bottom line is max velocity does raise the boat, I guess, up in the water a little bit, right? If you have higher max velocity mechanics, even if you're not necessarily harping on acceleration in this, which we're always talking about acceleration, right? Because you got to get up to speed one way or the other. But I don't overcoach acceleration in it, besides making them make sure they're in decent postures. It will rise the tide though, and it will make everything better with it. So our acceleration metrics tend to go through the roof when we've got good sessions going and kids are starting to understand it.
Good, because that brings me to the next question, which are obviously top speed or max speed is a KPI that you look at. Are there other KPIs that are there other metrics that you would take a peek at from a session? Kind of like global metrics. Which ones would those be?
I'm getting from doing overspeed or just in general?
In general. Let's go general and overspeed.
Yeah, overspeed. I mean, for overspeed, I'm definitely looking at the actual velocity, the miles per hour, and then just having a relative comparison. Because, in the day, if the wind is not too windy and it's not changing, hopefully, then it's relative. I look at it from a relative standpoint.
Will, can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Wind is huge. If
Yeah.
you are doing overspeed outside, you need to know where the wind is coming from.
Facts.
So you can't do overspeed into a 12-mile-an-hour wind. They will
Never.
cancel. So you've always got to make sure you know where the wind is coming from and vary your settings and such based on the wind conditions, unless you're inside, which then you've only got a 60-meter track. But if you're outside, you have to know where the wind is coming from. Okay, go ahead.
No, and I appreciate you saying that because now you got me excited to talk about this part, which is I do turn that thing down when it's really windy. It's already assisted sprinting, so
Yeah,
like,
you don't, yeah.
so no, that's another conversation too. Um, for us, we only run with the wind. We don't run against the wind here, because it gets fairly windy, so it doesn't make sense unless I'm looking to resist, and then I want even resistance, so I'll just go with the wind and get resisted that way. Um, but no, back to where I was saying, I look at the MPHs. I definitely see, I look for 0 to 5 if I'm just doing a regular session. It gets kind of gives me an understanding of, are you being more horizontally projective? Like, are you coming out and really projecting well? Gives me like a base barometer for that. And then I mean, I have like a time. Obviously, there's a time there that comes from whatever variable. Like if I'm overspeeding for 60 meters, that time is comparative towards the next time. So everything's very relative towards the individual and their individual markers as we go through that session in that same environment.
Do you guys
I
look at
think,
force?
I think, hang on, let me go real quick. I think someone who is who's not quite ready for it, you need to change the settings, is you're going to see a bigger spike if you're looking at your graph. That's on the old machine. So
Yeah,
the waveform is going to be different between someone who is really smooth compared to someone who's putting on some brakes or may have a broke posture or something like that. So that's a good indicator that you might need to change your settings, is if you're getting a big power output or you're going to see a lot of spikes on the waveform when the
which
data comes in.
yeah, because then obviously are you looking at the continuous power curve, or are you looking at the continuous force curve?
Both. Oh, not the force curve, but I just look. When it comes up on the thing, it comes up velocity. If I see huge spikes, I know someone's putting on the brakes. You'll have a higher output, I think, just because they're putting on the brakes and they're forcing the machine to slow down a little bit and have to reaccelerate possibly. But
So in interstep, yeah, interstep, kind of like the total amplitude of the waveform.
yes, yeah.
Oh, because I think that's important information, and that was one question that came up here too. Like, you obviously, with your trained eye, you will see this, but then do you then use the waveform to then confirm what you're
Right.
seeing
And a
or
lot of
seeing?
times as a coach running the 1080, like with my Legend model, my ass is sitting on the machine. So I can't see from the side. So I need to look at my graph to see what's actually going on so I get a better read.
And I think that gives a different conversation too. So like for us, everything's recorded side view, and then we also have 1080 information, and then we combine that to get that full encompassing view. So it kind of confirms, and that's what we're using. That's how we're using the data more or less. It's like you have the actual video camera view where you can see what's happening, and is that confirming what's coming from the data on the machine?
Next
Go ahead,
question, kind
Matt.
of with some of the data feedback. So we can all agree that overspeed, it's a yes. There should be some sort of whether it's technical acuity or just GPP. But on the flip side, when is it time to call it or end the overspeed session? So obviously the obvious answer is when the form breaks down and it doesn't look good anymore. But just like we're looking for a 10% overspeed, is it a 10% drop off? Are you looking at the waveform and the velo distance curve and they can't hold their speed through the finish? So the graph kind of tails off at the end. Like if it's 4 reps programmed for the workout, do you do all 4 regardless? Or kind of how do you use some of that instant feedback if we're talking 1080 sprints, whether it's the actual data or the graph itself, to kind of call the session beyond just watching and being a coach?
Well, since I use the releases, you can start to see it, when their speed starts, when they can't get that top end speed, you might see some wobble. But I also think that a good rest period in between is really important, that this is not I'm going to go do a bunch and get 3 minutes rest. This is something that is really stressful on your neural system, and you need 12 to 16 to 20 minutes of rest in between reps, just so the body can kind of figure out what's going on, because I don't want neural fatigue. I need that to get back to a starting point, where we started. And it's stressful. It is really stressful, especially when you start taking away an arm or something like that. The brain has to figure that stuff out, and you need a little time afterwards to go. So this isn't a 3-minute rest, 5-minute rest type thing. This is hard. This is really hard on your body. You're taking the most complicated, stressful event in a human life, which is sprinting as fast as you can, because you need everything from a neural standpoint and a physical standpoint and in a chemical standpoint, and we're doing more. So the body, it's going to take the body to go, wait a minute, what did I just do here? Woo! I need it. Let me sit for a minute. Let me take a break for a second.
I believe in this. Like once you start seeing the velocities going down, once you start seeing the athlete not being as coordinated or starting to have oscillation, then that's a big key factor. And then also, like he said, having full rest is absolutely mandated. We're going beyond, we're going beyond. So that simple adaptation is gonna tax him to the point. And the whole point is to get faster, not to just do sub-max work.
One thing that we did this year, that because we have 2 machines, we would do a toe or a resisted run out to about 40, 50 meters, unhook, the other machine's waiting for you to pull you back, so you're in a fatigue state, and then we would pull you back and then release you. So we would call it a perfect 200. So your variable resistance out in the pull, then I'm going to pull you back, and then we're going to let you go, and you're going to finish that 200 and see if you can keep your form at the end of the 150 or 200, however far we were going that day. That's the joy of having 2 machines.
I was about to say that's a luxury.
Amazing. Hey guys, we're about ready to wrap up. I do have, yep. Oh, I have one more question.
Can I say one thing? We just published a study on the stability or the reliability of assisted outcome measurements using the sprint, which then highlights the different splits, top speed, and what have you there. So if you're looking at those numbers, we also published smallest worthwhile change, moderate worthwhile change, which means that you have a sense of what magnitude of the measurement is in fact different. So maybe we'll post that article with this, Adam, to some extent. So people have a sense of some of the metrics that they can use, but it's also at the same time make a judgment as to, is this in fact different, So that was just a little side comment there. Sorry.
No, and then we're trying to push out more things that we see out in the literature for assisted sprinting or overspeed, especially with motorized devices, because people have been doing this now for 10 years. So there's much more understanding what we're doing, like injury risk. Matt's been doing a great job in our newsletter pushing out research just so people have a feel of what's going out in the community. So they're not like just, I guess I'm just really thankful for what you guys did today, because I think it's helping close the gap for a lot of people's knowledge of like, how do I use this? Because there's a lot of excitement of using a assisted stimulus, but where do I use it? And there's a lot of playing there. You guys have been playing with it, so thank you, and you've gotten really good results, which is just awesome. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. We've been going for an hour. You guys were awesome. I know I have a lot of questions I've written down that I will talk to you guys individually. But thank you again for doing this. I guess I'm just going to leave it here. Make speed happen. You guys have a great rest of your summer. So thanks for bouncing in. And everybody that joined us, we had a great attendee list. Thanks for the questions. We'll talk to you all later.